Hi, everyone. My name is Genesis Amaris Kemp. I am an author. I wrote my first book. It came out in May. It took me a little over 2 months. I am also first generation American. I'm really passionate about self development and currently on the fight for equality, equity, inclusion, and diversity, not just for people who look like me, but for other people who may have been slighted in their industry or wherever their walk of life has brought them. And so I definitely believe that we are better when we come together, and we need each one of us needs each other to thrive and succeed in life. So I'm on a mission for helping others and allowing you all to help me too. And together we will win and be extraordinary people.
I guess let me start. The first question that I like to ask is, what do you think people's first impression of you is?
It depends where I am. A lot of people have said I'm a firecracker. Some people have said I'm very bubbly, or others just can't figure me out. Other people have told me, "Oh my gosh, you look like you're a teenager. You're so small and petite. I would never guess that you were this old." And I'm like, "Yep, that's me." And other people are like, "Oh, I just can't figure you out." And I was like, "Well, just don't put me in a box because I'm going to pop out."
I love that. I love it. Well, I want to address some of the things that you said in your introduction. I mean, obviously, I know you'll want to talk about your book, which we will get to, but you said that you are a first generation American.
Yes.
Tell me what that means.
So my parents are foreigners. My mom is from the West Indies, so in the Caribbean, and my dad is from the ABC Islands. He's from Curacao.
Very cool. So, tell me what that means to you. Tell me what that brings to your life.
Um, it definitely brings complexities because having two different cultures like meet and collide, and being born in the US where two of my siblings weren't born in the US, so the views are a little different. And then my sisters and I are all American, so I guess Americanized. You definitely one cool thing I do like is that it gave me the ability to travel and go outside of the US, whereas some people who live in the US have never ever been outside of their own state, let alone the country. And I definitely feel that whenever you're afforded the ability to travel, it broadens your horizon because you're able to interact with people from other backgrounds and cultures, and the world is not so much in a box. But when you stay so enclosed to your close knit circle and your family, you're not afforded to see or interact with other people. So then you become very close minded. And I feel like that has a lot to do with the way that people start to treat other people, is because when you don't understand someone of another background, you're not going to understand their perspective. And you can say you get it, but then do you really get it? Because you're just making preconceived judgments. So that's one cool thing I like about being from a multicultural background and being afforded the abilities to travel outside of the US to visit my family.
You said something about, if you don't understand people and no judgment. And that's the whole motivation for me doing these interviews and sharing these stories is I believe that we meet people in this moment in time and we don't know or understand where they've been before they got to this moment. And so we do make judgments and assumptions. And so we all know what assumptions do. And so I feel that getting people's stories and sharing them is important and acknowledging other people as human beings. So I like that the diversity in what your life has had to offer you. I think that's very cool. Um, you mentioned something else in your introduction about really advocating for people who have been slighted or that you feel have not had opportunity or their opportunities have been thwarted. Do you care to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so A lot of the things that I have been doing is being bold and sharing my story, sharing my testimonies on various platforms, whether they're on blogs or other podcasts, but just not being afraid to just tell my story, but then also interact with other people who may have endured something similar. And then we can have a healthy dialogue. And I could ask them, well, why do you feel that way? Or how are you going to go about changing the narrative? Are you fighting for other people? Are you going out and speaking at events, whether they're virtual events now or in-person events? Or are you just saying that you're really for the people, but you're really, not getting out there and promoting what you stand for, because that's a difference. Like, saying that you're going to help someone and actually doing it is two different things. So a lot of times when people ask me, I'm like, hey, I have nothing to lose. Yes, I was slighted by this current company and I'm still working there because, another opportunity has not presented itself. So until I can fully build my brand and my author stuff on the side, I'm not going to leave somewhere that, gives me my bread and butter. But what I am going to do is not let them keep me in a box. What I am going to do is challenge management when I feel like they aren't being inclusive and diverse. I am going to call out unconscious biases, and I'm going to do what I can within my power to change my narrative while at that company, but also encourage the other people that look like me to speak up, because at the end of the day, it's not just about you and me, it's about those who are coming behind us and paving a way for future generations to come, because we're not always going to be at that company. We're probably going to get another opportunity. Some people are going to retire or whatever the case may be. But if you stay there and you don't do anything, can you really say you made an impact?
Right. Are you part of the solution or part of the problem?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So, do you want to expand on what happened, what your story, what your situation was?
Sure. So I started at this particular company as an administrative assistant. So the very bottom of the totem pole. I remained an admin assistant for 4.5 years. When I came into the company, I came in as a psychology degree because I was going to use that as my stepping stone, because like my whole dream was to go to medical school or whatever. But then they're like, what do you plan on doing with a psychology degree working for this oil and gas company? You're not going to go far. So I finally finished my degree. It was December of 2016. So I went back to my supervisor. I said, hey, I have the piece of paper now. I'm ready to move into a professional role. And there was another fight, because they're like, oh, just because you have a degree doesn't mean that you're going to move into a professional role. And I was like, isn't that what we talked about? Like, whenever you told me if I wanted to go far in the company, change my degree. I was like, it's kind of crappy that you guys would pay for people's tuition, but you won't want to see a return on your investment. I said, I didn't go to school for basket weaving. I didn't go to school to be an admin. Like, I want a professional role, or I could take my skills elsewhere. Like, as soon as I could complete my time commitment, because they put a stipulation on it. If you got your degree with the company, you couldn't leave for 2 years. And if you left before that, you would have to pay all the money back. So I was like, I definitely have to be smarter about this. And I made a really good friend who ended up retiring, and she put my name in for her position. So I ended up getting her position. That was my first jump outside of the admin bucket. But the thing that really sucked about that was, even though I took that position, they were still paying me as an admin, even though I was doing the work of a professional. So fast forwarding, the good thing about my book coming out and me being more bold was I spoke up at the vice president's meeting whenever he wanted to get those who identified as African Americans together after the whole George Floyd incident. And by that point, I had nothing to lose. Like, I was like, what's gonna happen is gonna happen. So I pretty much told him my story, and I was like, I don't think it's wise that I started here in 2013 as an admin. It's now 2020. I'm still being paid as an admin, but I'm doing the work of a professional. I manage the relationship of internal and external stakeholders. I travel for the company. Like, I have an Amex card. I was like, if no admin travels for the company, I'm speaking in front of C-suite executives telling them about the business, about the product, about our inventory controls and etc. But yet you guys still want to pay me as an admin. I said, I don't think that's right. And I kid you not, a week later, my salary increased by 20%. After my supervisor pretty much told me, oh, you're not going to get a salary treatment for 2 years. You're not going to move into a professional role for 2 years. But I didn't let that stop me. And I'm come from a praying background. So my parents are very religious. So it was just my faith that just really kept me grounded because I was like, this is a bunch of baloney.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that wasn't in the book since it just recently happened, but that is a big jump. So like you can imagine, for 3 years while I've been doing this current role, I have been underpaid by 20%.
That's what do you attribute the underpayment to?
Race.
So you attribute it to race. Do you attribute any of it to gender?
Well, no, because my supervisor's a female, but I do feel like sometimes females, instead of complimenting one another, we're always in competition with each other. And I said we could get so much further along if we just start complimenting one another because we all have various assets that we could put together and make it an extraordinary experience. But we're always like, oh, is she going to steal my job? Or what are they going to say about Susie? Or oh my gosh, like, did you see Brittany? Like, yes, she was in the meeting with the supervisor. Like, who cares? Like, Brittany's race is Brittany's race. Genesis race is Genesis race. But if we could take Brittany and Genesis and put them together, like one could be a punter and then one could be the touchdown star. Imagine, like, the incredible accomplishments we could have if we just come together in partnership. But no, we're so busy about trying to climb the corporate ladder and stepping on one another that we can't even open our eyes to see things clearly.
Where else in your life um, has you being, as you put it, the chocolate drop slighted you, thwarted you? Have you felt an impact? Have you felt um, discrimination, or has it impeded your progress?
So I would say when I was working at another organization, so I had started out back in high school working at the cancer center, and I was also the youngest person there, the only African American. And there was a lady that came after me who was Asian, and she had a little bit more experience. And so they ended up keeping her on, but letting me go. And I was like, okay, is it because I am the only colored person, or is it because I don't have as much experience? And I just wasn't really sure about it, but I could definitely say, looking back on that situation, it really helped me grow. Because if I would have stayed stuck in that mindset and wondering, like, I would not be where I am today if I would have held on to, those barriers. And because sometimes in life we could have mental barriers that um keep us boxed in or cause us to stunt our growth. So just taking a licking and keep on ticking.
What was it that made you speak up? What was it that made you were you afraid of what a consequence may be from voicing your opinion and saying, I did this, I deserve this, this is my value? Because, like you just mentioned, corporate America is corporate America, and they can just say, no, next.
Um, just seeing older people like who look like me become so bitter and miserable and hear their stories, but they never spoke up about it. I'm like, seriously? Like, so you'd rather be miserable and unhappy doing the grunt work than to just speak up? So I was like, I don't want that to be me. Like, I don't want to be, bitter Betty. And I don't want to just come to work every day with a sour attitude because you spend the majority of your time at work. And I was like, okay, if you don't speak up, okay, what are you getting from it? If you do speak up, okay, maybe you'll lose your job or maybe not. So I felt like it was just a game that I was willing to play because, like I tell people, working in corporate America is definitely a game. It's a lot of politics, or like people say, a lot of politicking. Um, and you really have to be on. And sometimes it is mentally and emotionally draining to constantly be on because you're like, oh man. And then whenever, and I just feel like I don't want to be that person. Like I want to be happy, and like I want to actually get along with the people that I work with, and I want to make a difference.
Did you see any adversity that your parents faced as you grew up that shaped your thought process and motivations?
Oh yes, most definitely. Because my mom is a very passive person, and she's just very nice. And she always did what people told her to do. And she never did my mom like stand up for herself. Like if a manager told her, okay, do this, she's gonna do it because that's authority. And I felt like, mom, like you really don't agree with that. So why did you do it? And I felt like just seeing her uh behave that way, I was like, oh my gosh, I never want to be like my mom. I don't want to be a doormat. I don't want people to walk over me. So that's why I'm just so like direct and so blunt, and I'm just very like vocal. And my dad is very vocal. So I feel like when you're vocal, then people are not going to, take you for granted, or people aren't going to, just be like, oh yeah, she's just gonna do whatever I tell her to do. Like, no, they're gonna think twice before they approach you with nonsense. And I definitely feel like I have a very closer connection with my dad because he's always been there, and then my mom has always been like, work, 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 work. Like, missed a lot out of my school events, but I know she worked so she could provide. Whereas my dad, he worked, but he also still made time to come to the events that were important for me. And I think that's very important, especially, you know, doing that. And yes, I've seen my parents have to sacrifice a lot. Like my mom was in school for nursing, and she never really finished or achieved some of her dreams because she was so worried about me and my siblings and providing for us. And I feel like looking back, I want to ask her, does she have any regrets? Because sometimes I feel like parents put their dreams on hold because they want their kids to be better than they are. But why can't you have both? And I feel like us millennials, like, okay, I don't have any kids, but whenever I do, I'm still going to achieve my dreams and still be a mother too.
So, what is something that would surprise people to know about you?
Oh, I guess my age, because people could never guess my age by looking at me.
Okay, so
So I'm actually 29, thinking I'm like, oh, 15 or 13. I'm like, seriously? Or whenever my husband and I go out, like, is that your little sister? And he's like, no, that's my wife. Because my husband, like, I tell people, like, his whole head could fit on top of my head because I'm that petite, like, next to my husband. And I'm like, I'm fun size.
you're fun size. Tell me about the book. Tell me what motivated you to write the book. Tell me what the book is about. Tell me how we got here.
Okay, so the book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America. This is my editor edition. That's why there's like a big gray line. I just want you to look at the cover really quick so you can see that I'm all about inclusion and diversity. The people on the book are from various industries, professions, letting people know that systemic issues can happen in all industries, not just corporate America. And there's all people from different ethnic backgrounds, letting people know that systemic issues don't just happen to African Americans or chocolate drops that look like me, but they can happen to anyone, whether it's sexism, ageism, racism, or whatever the case may be. Everyone has faced a situation where they have been plighted, but the thing is, the call to action is speaking up about your situation, sharing your story, because there's power in sharing your story. When you share your story, it helps break the bondage and change of the bondage and chains of someone else that may be enduring something similar, but they may not have an outlet, or they may not have someone to resonate to. So you just never know the power of sharing your story and how it can impact others, whether they tell you how impactful it is or whether you read it later on the internet. And the book, like I said, it really pertains to our daily lives. Like when we face various trials and tribulations, like being treated unfairly, whether it's in the workforce or whether it's in a restaurant, because there's times where you go to a restaurant and sometimes waiters don't necessarily want to serve African Americans. And I've witnessed that with my own husband being with him being a chef, because they're like, oh, they're not going to tip or whatever, because it's like what their preconceived notion is. But not all African Americans or chocolate drops are the same. But if you keep that in your mind, you're limiting yourself, and you're also setting yourself back, because that person that you never wanted to interact could may necessarily be your best friend, or could be that person that leaves you a big fat generous tip that can help you put food on the table, or whatever the case may be. um and then another thing is just being able to shake up the atmosphere can cause a domino effect. So I'll just read the back of the book really quick. So the questions here, and I definitely want people to be interactive and really think about this. So, what challenges in the workplace have you encountered that left you feeling as if you were mistreated? Have others who were unqualified seemingly pass you by in the ranks? So that goes for a lot of people who, in our daily lives, we are all faced with various trials, whether in the workforce or at home. However, when treated unfairly, it takes courage to stand and fight for what's right. No matter your race, nationality, ethnicity, or background, you can rise to be the game changer. When you use the power of your voice, you shake the atmosphere and cause a domino effect, because others will choose to either follow suit or stand in solidarity. On the pages of Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, Genesis, that's me, y'all, has chosen to speak up for not only minorities, but also anyone who has been slighted on the job in any way. From her personal testimony, you will learn how speaking up brought awareness so that long lasting change could be made. We do not win by remaining silent, overlooking injustice, and continuing to practice poor judgment. We win by standing together, engaging in those difficult conversations, and helping one another. Let's work together to create change for future generations to come. And that's on the back of the book, because I definitely want people to see, like, don't let the title deter you away from opening the goods. Even though the title may be controversial, you should never judge a book by its cover.
I love the statements on the back of the book and the story. Um, I want to back up for a second. You mentioned describing it and how things kind of came to be and experiences, and you mentioned your husband is a chef, and you mentioned um, people not wanting to serve other people because of perceptions. Can you tell me about, and I'm sure there are more than you care to admit, but can you tell me about a time like that in your life, something you've experienced where racism has been a big issue?
Oh, like I said, the restaurant industry, like, since my husband's a chef, we like to go out and try different restaurants and, kind of critique them in our own way. And there was a time where we got to the restaurant before someone, but the person that came after us was seated before us. Their food came out before us. And I'm like, seriously? We're all dressed up, dolled up. And I'm like, okay, is that due to race or whatnot? And then we were seated like close to the back of the restaurant. Who wants to sit by the toilet? Like, we're not in the Rosa Parks days anymore. I'm not gonna get in the back of the bus.
Right.
And I just kind of like, kind of took it. I'm like, okay, babe, is this a race? And then my husband's like, not everything is about race. And I'm like, well, why weren't we waited on like before? Did they have special reservations? Did they call ahead or something? And why are we in the back? Because I'm sure there was other tables, and if I can remember accurately, I'm sure there was other tables in the front.
Yep.
Yes. And then another incident, like I said, with having four different nieces and nephews that are biracial, two being Caucasian and two being half Indian. Like, I've had people in the grocery store stop me to ask me whose kids those were, because they honestly don't look African American. And I'm like, seriously? So I'm just gonna steal a pair of kids, or just some stranger kids are gonna be walking with me? And I'm like,
So
it,
people asked you who the children were in the assumption that they shouldn't have been with you.
yes.
I've heard stories out here in California where people will be walking around and they get assumed that they're the nanny versus the parent.
Yeah, my sister used to live in California with her kids, and she was an interracial couple, and people would always look at her and the kid's dad and like just roll their eyes and like just do crazy stuff because, you know, I guess they didn't want to see a chocolate drop and a vanilla drop together or like a black and white person together. And I'm like, hey, just say I'm down with the swirl. Like, when you get your ice cream like out the machine, it's like, do you want chocolate or vanilla? Or you could pick both.
I love it. I love it. I don't know. What do you think it will take for that not to happen?
Ugh, I have no idea. I would definitely think that people need to
Mhm.
really train their kids when they're young because behavior is learned and taught. So if you keep continue with the same old rhetoric, that's not really going to produce or stimulate change. I also think it comes with education, like educating yourself on other people's culture, why they do what they do, why they talk the way they talk, or why they interact the way they do. I think that would definitely help put us further along in society, and just stripping away like all the preconceived notions and bullcrap. Because like just because someone talks like me does not mean that they're Oreo.
Is there anything that you want to share with people that are watching before I ask you the final question that I asked to close out these conversations?
Sure, I definitely want to read the dedication section of the book because I think that's also a very important piece of the book. So I'm just going to read it. It's very short, and then I'll leave them with two quotes to ponder on, and then the rest they'll have to read the book.
I like it.
So, dedication to Vanessa, my spiritual angel, my ride or die, my bestie, my little sister. Even though you aren't physically here, I know you are smiling down from heaven. Your legacy and impact will always live on. This is for you and future generations to come. So, my little sister had lupus and she lost her battle about 5 years ago. So, I'm very passionate about the lupus awareness and the movement. So, even though she's not here, I wanted her to still have a piece of me and a piece of all the books that sell. um, Chocolate Drop in corporate America is also dedicated to every admin who was told they would never get out of that box, the one that the corporation places around you because they don't recognize your value and can't see past general administrative tasks. Admins, you are more than just an admin. Use your current situation to catapult you to your rightful platform. So since I was an admin, I think it's very important to give tribute back to those who are still admins because you should never forget where you came from, no matter how high or far you go in life. Um, to every minority who has struggled to find their rightful place in corporate America, as well as any industry, I dedicate this book to you as well. You are the ones who had to constantly fight for a seat at the table, work twice as hard, even to be seen and noticed, and feel invaluable as if you were just a number to the corporation. Eventually, you find that one divine connection who can see your worth. Only then do you get a breakthrough. So sometimes when you're a minority, certain companies just hire you so they could show to their shareholders how inclusive and diverse they are. But do you just want to be a number to the corporation or do you want to be a difference maker? To every business professional in all walks of life, you are not forgotten. Everyone has faced and endured various trials and tribulations that could be spoken about, some of which were unfair, while others you turned from a negative into a positive. You have been emboldened to launch out deep and walk into your destiny, purpose, and calling. So I think it's very important for allyships. Allyships are very key in building a strong foundation and cultivating a mutual rapport. To those who are willing to take the blinders off, do some self reflection, and work on creating lasting change in the workforce, know that if we do not speak up, stand up, call out unconscious biases, and work on changing the mindset of those ignorant individuals, then we are only regressing instead of moving forward in society. Let's all come together and work collaboratively to make lasting impacts. Lastly, I dedicate this book to everyone who has a dream, not to let people or things keep you in bondage. Follow your heart, share your story, travel. I'm going to say that again, travel, and be the best version of yourself. Someone needs you to pass the baton, be their voice, narrate their story, or partner with them to create a revolution of opportunities. So, the dedication section is very versatile because I want people to know that this book can apply to you and your situation. You just have to be open minded and read it with the blinders off. And then I'm just going to pick two quotes that I want to leave with the audience. So, one quote is, sometimes people place limitations on you because they do not want you to outshine them, or there is a sense of jealousy or another complex issue. Let's help build up one another instead of tearing each other down. That's in the reflection quote. And then my other quote, okay, this is a good one. Hearing no is just a redirection to your real purpose in life. It is meant to push you to evaluate your skills and start thinking about what you could start working on to advance in life. So I started this thing that knows when people tell me no, I'm like, okay, that means just next opportunity or new opening.
Yep, I agree. I'm in sales. I get a lot of no's. So I totally understand that. I love that. I love both of those quotes. I like the dedication. I like the inclusiveness, especially since that's your whole point. um, you're incredible. Where can people get the book?
So my book is available on Amazon.com. The paperback is $13 and the Kindle version is $2.99. I'm also on Facebook at Genesis. So Genesis, like the Bible, Amaris, Kemp, Kemp. People can email me. I'm still growing, so I answer all my emails and I want that personal connection. So it's Genesis, Genesis, Amaris, Amaris, Kemp, Kemp at gmail.com. And then I also have a author page on Facebook, which is the name of my book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America.
Awesome. Well, I encourage people to reach out to you because I know it's been more than rewarding for me to interact with you, and our conversations have been so nice. So, last but not least, if you were maybe out to dinner with your husband or walking around town, if you had the opportunity to hold up a sign that could say one thing about Genesis and Morris Kemp, what would you want people to know about you?
Go get her. Go get her.